Eric, thanks so much for joining us. On what I think is going to be a really good discussion around sensors and technology and data and platforms and all kinds of stuff. All very exciting and like many different industries, ours is changing rapidly with cloud computing and all this kind of stuff. So really interested to get your take on it and how distance kind of wants to work with its partners. So could you please just give me a little bit of background on yourself and the business and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me here, Rafi. Well, it's in short about myself. I've spent about over 15 years in the industry, mainly oil and gas. I've been all over the world in the weirdest places, and then I ran into these guys at distance. I'm a business development manager for them. So what does is we are in the business of maximizing your machine health. So we focus on rotating machinery and we make them last longer, produce more, and perform better. The condensed solution that we have built for this helps our OEM and MRO partners to and the end user organizations to run more efficiently and increase their asset reliability. We have done this for close to 20 years now, and we started from planetary gearboxes in the wind industry. Since,
Yeah.
of course, the remoteness was and the cost of maintenance was high. So that was the main driver for the first customer in that field. Those systems are still in use as a white label, and which is also how we eventually got to design Condense,
Okay,
which we developed in 2016.
that's really interesting. So do you mind if I just jump in there? Because I mean, the wind industry has obviously come a long way in the last.
Mhm.
You said you guys have been in business for 20 years. I mean, back 20 years ago, I think it was micro-pitting failures, right? Which were kind of plaguing
Yes.
the wind industry. Um,
Mm.
so is that one of the reasons that your initial customers had come to you, that they were seeing failures and wanted to be able to recognize them in real time? How did that kind of come about?
Yeah, I think the main driver there was, as I said, the remoteness and the cost of maintenance that came with that.
Yeah.
Um, it's I think the wind industry has been working on remote monitoring since the 80s. They're kind of the forerunners of it, and it's the most saturated market that we've seen as well. So their main driver is the high cost, and that really decreased significantly by implementing remote monitoring systems. So up till this day, um, this customer and more customers, they use our systems to monitor the gearbox. They monitor the generator and the main bearing.
Hmm.
Usually, the turbine is left alone since the OEM already equipped it with quite capable solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sorry, I sort of interrupted you there, but you were talking about, I guess the condensed platform.
Ah, yes, of course. Well, we decided to develop the platform back in 2016 because we realized doing everything on a project base, that's basically reinventing the wheel over and over again for $1 million. So that's when we did in 5 years ago, and that has become the Condensed Platform, which we are building mainly to deliver as a white label to OEMs and MRO companies, but also as direct deliveries to end users. So what we do with that is we deliver relevant tools and scalability that's needed to build a future-proof IoT solution. And something we recognize in the market is that these solutions can never be a one-size-fits-all approach. So we combine a software as a service platform with automated vibration analysis, oil analysis, and other continuous condition monitoring technologies. And that forms different approaches to serve different machine criticality levels, but still all of them in one and the same platform, which the end user values highly, we noticed as well. So for instance, the smart terminals, they have an open sensor interface that connects basically any commercial sensor out there and works adapter on site before sending it. The cloud itself is open as well. This can integrate with the CMMS, with inventory or IT systems, but it also has a third-party hardware and cloud-to-cloud interface. So we communicate on many different levels. This flexibility allows our customers to integrate their assets with decision making.
Yep.
Right. And they can do that globally, free from time and space. And because they own their data 100%, this also builds up their database to further future-proof their company.
Okay. So can I
some arguments too?
Yeah, sorry. Do you mind if I just jump in here? Because, people hear like all these terms getting thrown around, sort of like cloud and end to end and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think especially for guys that are sort of more grounded in machinery and engineering and haven't had that much exposure to, let's say, the software side of the business, all of a sudden that sort of like spins your head a little bit. So if I were to understand it correctly, you guys can plug into data streams from most commercially available sensors, right? So you can buy an off-the-shelf sensor, and usually it's pinging out, let's say it's a vibration sensor. It's pinging out vibration data, whether that's, to the internet or to a local server. But as long as you can intercept that signal, right, because it's an open platform, then you guys are able to bring that data in. And effectively with that data, your platform allows that data to be integrated into virtually any system that the maintenance organization is already using. Is that a fair summary of what it does?
Yes. Yeah. But that's pretty fair indeed, Rafi. The commercial sensors for accelerometers, for example, they are, as long as they are IEPE, they're compatible with this terminal. And then we have analog connections in there too for pressure, flow, current, or whatever, and Modbus connections. So for Modbus, for example, the smart sensors and the oil sensors, etc. Inside this terminal, the analysis then takes place, right? So the terminal, every cycle, it does around 550 different calculations, looking at vibration samples, but also looking at the same sample, we look at it from a different angle and we see friction as well. So we even can see the need for greens in a bearing. So we even turn that into a need-based. Well, we allow for design of need-based schedules rather than time-based. Similar to what. So
I was going to ask: is that analytics that's coming from you guys, from Condensed, or is that are they, let's say, analytics that are applied by the end user?
No, these are analytics that are designed by us. We have developed these algorithms, and what I described to you just now shortly, the friction one, we have developed in close collaboration with the university here. So this we have put in that terminal. So basically, we've put the knowledge of decades of research and multiple a multitude of experts in that terminal. They live in there, right? And what happens there is every cycle that's completed, the lean data, because it's not a big bulk anymore, it's being sent to the cloud every 5 minutes, right? So, but also the raw data is sent once per day. So everything everything stays available for the client in that cloud. Um, yeah, that's in a nutshell what happens with it. Then in the cloud, it's topped by some analyses as well.
Yeah. Okay. So that, I think one of the interesting things, for me at least, picking up there was, the idea that expertise is baked into, kind of the platform, right? In the sense that
Yes.
there's a whole bunch of research that's gone on, and you sort of get to take advantage of this
Mhm.
because it's in many ways it's put on autopilot. And
Mhm.
I guess the thing that's interesting for me there is maybe speaks to wider industry trends where we've seen a lot of, I would say, experts in the field. You know, I can speak specifically to lubrication and lubricants technologies.
Mhm.
Over the last 10 years, a lot of that experience has left the industry. And there hasn't really been, people coming through to replace a lot of that expertise. So one of the problems that I see is, how do you scale the expertise of the few people that remain? And
Yeah,
obviously we
that's
have to do
yeah.
that digitally because that's really the only way that you can do it. And it's interesting to hear you talk about that specifically as being one of the features of the product is that there are people, with expertise who developed a lot of these algorithms, and then that becomes baked into the software.
Yeah, and indeed, that's one of the ways we approach it by basically by putting this in the terminal itself on the edge. Um, Part of that expertise is available, right? And that is mainly to automate the routine tasks on site. So all of the routine measurements that are taken and calculated, we automate that, which makes it way quicker,
Yeah.
right? So, but another thing we do with the platform is because it's an open and collaborative platform, we leave the expertise that's floating around there, we leave them right there where they love to be the most and where they're needed the most, right? So what happens now is that by them being able to further analyze data remotely through either the built-in analysis tool or by extracting the data and running it in their own favorite software, they can do their job remotely. And they only have to travel to site when absolutely needed.
Mhm.
Because we have noticed that the experts, the expertise, like a vibration analyst, oil analyst, they're scarce, right? And scarcity makes them expensive and difficult to get when you really need them. You need them today, you need them tomorrow, right? So we make those people available when they are needed. And from the analyst, from the specialist point of view, they don't need to travel to site for every measurement and then go through a safety training and opening that toolbox around lunchtime. And then at nighttime in their hotel room, do the analysis.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that anymore. They can wake up, start that job at 8 o'clock, finish by 10, next job, right? And they can do that from home, from a beach in Bali. We don't care where they are. They might care where they are,
Yeah.
right? So this is what I mean with turning scarcity into availability when it comes to experts. Instead of putting experts into our box, you belong to distance now. You work for distance and you are stamped condense. You don't work for anyone else anymore. No, they should work for everyone else. Their knowledge should be available to anyone out there who needs it. As you just said, a lot of the knowledge is already disappearing from the market. And on top of this, Rafi, it takes a long time to build up as well. Before you go from a Cat 1 to a Cat 2, it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes experience, continuous presence in the field. From 2 to 3, it takes longer. From 3 to 4, that takes even longer than that, right?
Mm.
So it's, and these people, we need them. We need their knowledge, and their knowledge needs to be available. And on the other hand, the user, the demand increases more even because everything is being digitalized nowadays,
Yeah.
right? So
Mm.
we try to
That's really
stimulate
interesting
that market.
because, what you're speaking to is almost a kind of a consultant level um, model, right? Where you would have
Mhm.
specific experts that can be contacted basically by anyone that, let's say, for example, uses the distance platform, regardless of which company they work for, right? Um, for for an opinion or for an analysis or whatever. We're seeing a similar thing happen in Australia, but within companies. So a lot of the time, let's say, for example, in the mining sector, your likes of BHP, Rio Tinto, these are huge organizations with assets that are scattered, certainly all across Australia, but increasingly all across the world. And so often what they're doing is they'll have a engineering center of excellence, right, located in a city, let's say it's Perth, that is doing remote monitoring of all the different sites. And like you say, that enables them to do it remotely. Now, I
Mhm.
think the one thing to sort of play off is that nothing is going to sort of replace in-person inspection, but this kind of gives you the ability to triage, right? Like I don't need to be everywhere at the same time. I'm getting all this data
Indeed.
coming in, and it can tell me at a high level, do I need to travel to site today?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, indeed. Because a lot of those tasks are unnecessary to do in the field. Similarly, for oil analysis, by automating that, a lot of samples that are being sent to the lab unnecessarily because they're healthy, just confirming they're healthy, right? You can skip all of that. Instead, you only take a sample when you need to take one, and then you put it under a microscope,
Mm.
no earlier and no later, right? So it's effectivity, efficiency, it's availability, it's all wrapped in one by collaborating. And um, let me be clear on this: that the remote experts, they don't have to be in our database either, because if you are a customer and you have Condense, then you have the ability. If you need a third party advice, if you need further inspection, right, a deeper analysis, then you can source anyone on the planet anywhere that you give this job to, right? Suppose you have category 3 in your company, or category 2, and you need a category 3 for this problem. You source one, you approach them. Would you like to take a look at this? And you negotiate. Then you open up the cloud temporarily, password protected, and they take a look in the data analysis tool, the vibration analysis tool. And then, as I said earlier, they can even extract the data and work on that. So it opens up in many different ways.
Mm.
And they can do it while being on a lunch break on a different job as well,
Yeah.
because you
So
need them. Right?
maybe a question that's a little bit more specific for this audience, because a lot of people will have a maintenance background here, but maybe specialize in lubrication. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like the transition from uh, vibration analysis to online vibration analysis, that's not too big a leap. But within the, let's say, oil analysis side of real-time monitoring, it feels like it's a much bigger jump from your standard, oil analysis that's sent off to a lab versus the inline monitoring that we're currently doing. It doesn't seem like the two are. It's easy to make the jump in understanding from one to the other, right? How are you seeing that sort of play out? Because again, you're speaking about expertise, right, and the idea that you can lean on basically a second opinion from anywhere in the world, specific to
Mm-hmm.
lubrication expertise. Do you uh, are you seeing the industry sort of catch up with the online sensor business?
Yeah, more and more. It's that happens all around us. And the thing that we notice is that basically the technology is available for all of it, but how to implement it for the end user, that is the challenge.
Hmm.
And for our OEM partners and our MRO partners specifically, it is a challenge to change their business models from the traditional maintenance approach to a remote or a hybrid business model.
Hmm.
And then we also help them with that change process. But back to the technology, indeed, especially for oil analysis, this is mainly based on smart sensors, right? So there again, the technology is available. We simply connect it, right? And then we top that with further analysis in the terminal and in the cloud. What I'd like to see out there is maybe a next generation of chemical sensor,
Yeah. Yep.
right? That looks at more than that. And something else that we noticed, and which is also something I mentioned in the LRVS talk recently. It's for example, when you look at varnish, right? Varnish, you can of course detect, but then it's already there, right? One stage earlier, you can tackle oxidation forming, right? By detecting water in the oil. So that's one step earlier. But still, well, at that point, there's water in your oil. So what we're doing right now, and what we're also open for on that third-party hardware interface, is to third-party suppliers, vendors, OEMs, or whatever they are, right? In this case, we are we integrated a desiccant breather, right? So by doing that and by controlling that part, we basically allow you to prevent moisture, humid air from
Yep.
entering the system, right? So you go from reactive to predictive to well, maybe back to preventive,
Yeah.
but a different approach of it. You kind of prevent the varnish to happen, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think there's more of such approaches available.
Mm.
There's more opening up.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I'd just like to pick up a little bit on a subject that I think we've been sort of talking around at the edges, which is this idea of open source versus closed system. So, I think it's very popular with data first companies and software companies to be open source. That's sort of in their DNA a little bit. And
Mhm.
and distance very much seems to come from that sort of ilk. My understanding is that with most off the shelf third party sensors, it's very easy to extract that data and have that on your platform. But let's say, for example, I am a turbo machinery operator and I have a GE Freight 9 on site. Well, that turbine usually comes with its own suite of sensors, whether it's, temperature sensors for the bearings or it's, RPM sensors. Can the Condensed platform tap into those data feeds as well?
Um, Basically, yes, we can. It's not as straightforward as a normal commercial sensor, of course, since they're proprietary sensors. Um, so there's a key in there that we need, of course. We are hooking up to third-party sensors as well. If you look, for example, at our easy package for the lower end of for the less critical machinery, we've adopted a wireless sensor there from a third party. So usually these guys don't mind you hooking up. Same we do with our smart sensors, because for them at the bottom line they still sell a sensor, right? But for the situation you described just now, where the turbine is protected by the OEM system, um, the situation might be a bit different, of course, in regards to warranties, etc., because they put their own sensors there for a reason. So, but technically, yes, we can connect from a technical point of view.
Yeah. Okay. So it's more a matter of getting permissions from the OEM.
Yeah, it's a permission thing, and it's also I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but our main targets start with the tier two critical equipment and then work their way down. Um, with having said that, we can do the tier one as well. The system is quite capable of covering highly critical machinery. However, the turbines, main compressor, etc., that stuff is usually covered by the OEM or by plant management systems, asset
Yeah.
management systems.
Okay.
So
Because I
we
wanted to
usually
ask,
cover everything below that.
yeah, I just wanted to ask a little bit about sort of the emerging business landscape too, right? Because,
Mm.
again, many business trends kind of follow the software industry. And one of the emerging trends that I think we're starting to see is everything being provided as a service, right?
Mhm.
So it's software as a service and entertainment as a service, and
Mhm.
now SKF had announced that they want to do rotation as a service. So you basically
Mhm.
pay per revolution rather than paying um, for a bearing essentially.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, do you see any emerging themes in this kind of sensor industry? Because, I don't know what SKF's plans are, right? But it would, in many ways, make a lot of sense if they wanted to have their own closed proprietary system that no one can talk to, if that makes sense. Um, but do you guys see any emerging themes in this industry?
Yeah, the different types of models are emerging all around us, of course. We look at the world a little bit different from that. We are 100% independent, and for us, it's very important that you are the asset owner. The data that we extract from it belongs to you. It's your gold mine, right? It's not someone else's. Um, and what we see with some of our MRO partners, for example, is that um, they develop models in more reliability as a service, where you approach the clients based on for an X amount of dollars per day, we safeguard your equipment. We assure you a reliability uptime. So that is one of the business models that we see emerging most.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other than that, as I said earlier, the remote models and hybrid models that they develop, uh, that gets them closer to the customer as well, right? It's for us, they are the feet on the ground locally, right? And they are the knowledge and expertise that is closer to the customer. They for us, they bridge the cultural gap, the linguistic gap. Uh, they close that and they build the trust with the customers that for us is harder to build from all the way over here.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win-win because the customer for the end user, the question of or maybe the fear of um, having help not available immediately when they need it, it's gone because their partner is right by their side, their service
Mhm.
partner.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question there.
No, I think that did a good job. That did a good job. And maybe I'd like to sort of finish off most of these interviews with a question of really about let's geared more towards the future. So,
Hmm.
um, I think the Internet of Things, it feels like it's been on the horizon for about 10 years. Um, but now it really starts to be in many ways, it's a much longer journey than that. What you were talking is we've been doing
Mhm.
online sensing basically since the 1980s. Um, but
Mhm.
it's really with all the cloud infrastructure that's been built on the back end by the likes of AWS and Microsoft Azure and all that, making it much more accessible and much more economic. Feels like Internet of Things is really kind of hitting its stride now. So, where do you see the future of this industry? Obviously, we're expecting a lot of growth, but do you think that a lot of the
Mhm.
growth will come from existing players in the market, or do you see, startup software type companies kind of entering the space? How do you guys view the landscape?
Oh, I think that's wide open. The traditional players, they add their value, and then they continue adding their value. But as it is in most businesses, there's sometimes the new breeze is something you really like.
Yeah,
I mean, it's you will never rule out, um, as I said before, the plant management or asset management systems that are established. They are really great at what they do, and the purpose they have been built for. Um, but there's other stuff that can complement it, and a lot of this comes from new developments, and that goes faster and faster. And this is also, for us, it's one of the drivers to be open as we are. First of all, of course, it's a practical thing.
Mm.
Instead of being starting with a sensor, putting R&D resources in a sensor, developing it, marketing it, and then what? The sensor technology gets outdated, but I still have to get my to fill my margins on it. I mean, I still and but at what point do I develop into, for example, self harvesting, which is the next thing that's already happening, right? So when do I start putting new R&D resources in that sensor, right? Instead of that, we have this terminal that can be the same terminal practically for ages.
Mm.
When sensor technology becomes obsolete, we simply connect other sensors, or you do it as a customer, right? Simple as that.
Yeah,
So um, that is where I see more in the. We should be open. We should have open sources. We should share knowledge. We should collaborate. Everything should be out there. It should not be boxed in different brands.
yeah,
And I think that's not what the end user wants either. They want the knowledge available, and they don't want to run different systems for purpose of uptime of their machinery.
yeah. Well,
They have one or two systems. It's way different, right?
yeah, yeah. So open, available, and good for the end user. I feel like that's a pretty good place to end. So thanks, Eric, for sharing your knowledge, not just about distance and the condensed platform, but more broadly about the sensor and platform industry in general. So really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us. And yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Rafi. Cheers.